Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Priya, and this is the third episode of my knitting podcast, where I talk about all things knitting, including what I've recently finished, what I'm currently working on, and what my future plans are. I apologize in advance if I seem a little bit low energy today. I just came back from a trip to Mexico City. Today is the day that I'm filming is Saturday, March 1st, and I came back from my trip around midnight Thursday night / Friday morning, and I'm still, I think, recovering from the difference in climate and the difference in altitude. If you don't know, Mexico City is 7,200 feet above sea level. Like, the altitude is even higher than Denver, which is interesting because I went there back in 2016 and had no idea, and I feel like I was like fine the way that I was, but this time I really felt it in terms of, like, you know, having to drink a lot more water and getting headaches and stuff like that, which was really interesting. And I just think being somewhere now where, you know, I have the heating on, it's like 30-40 degrees, and I have like a horrible deviated septum. I just feel a little bit of tingliness in my throat and my nose and my ears, and I also got food poisoning when I was in Mexico, so I'm still kind of reeling from that. Otherwise, the trip was good, except one thing that does affect my current yarn and knitting plans. I left my backpack there on the way to the airport. So thankfully it didn't include anything that was, you know, irreplaceable. I had my passport, I had my keys, so I was still able to come back to New York safely. But I left, you know, a few toiletries, like my wallet. Luckily there's somewhere that I can get them back there at my boyfriend's uncle's apartment, so they're somewhere safe. But included in my backpack was the socks that I wanted to knit for my boyfriend, the green socks that I talked about, I think, in my first knitting podcast episode. And my plan was to finish those during the trip, and I didn't bring any other knitting projects, but surprise, I did not finish even one sock, and then I left them in Mexico, so I can't continue working on them. So there is no update on that on that front. And to be honest, this episode might be a little bit boring because there aren't a ton of updates on my whips, but there are a few fun finished objects, which I'll just get into right now. I am wearing one of my finished objects today, and that is the Sookie cardigan by Woozy by Celine. At the time that I'm filming this, it's still in testing. I was a test knitter for this cardigan, so I don't know if there's much I can really talk about in terms of like design details, because things might be a little bit, things have the potential to change before the final design is released. But this is my finished product. I finished this so quickly because I wanted to have this nice pink cardigan done for Valentine's Day, and I achieved that goal. I will say, looking at this right here with these buttons, they look a little ripply, so I don't know. I'm probably not going to fix it, to be honest, but if you think it looks bad, that's fine. So I knit this cardigan using isager aran tweed in the colorway Rose, which is this really beautiful, I'm wearing sweatpants right now, so if you can see them, I'm sorry, but it's this very beautiful, I said it reminded me of strawberry ice cream kind of color with these different specks of pink and white and other things. And I think I mentioned in my last episode, there's a little bit of purple here and there, which was fun to see while I was knitting this up. And the buttons I got are just some like pink pearlescent buttons that I got from Downtown Yarns in the East Village. And Actually, when I was there to buy these buttons, I saw that Downtown Yarns is actually now selling isager aran tweed. So if you're interested and you're in the New York area and you want to see this yarn in real life, they sell it there now. I really love this yarn. Since I'm talking about the yarn already, I'll start talking about it. It is a bit rougher. It is 100% wool, but I think it blocked out beautifully. If you're into woolly wools, then this is the yarn for you. I have another sweater knit in this, and I actually have more in my stash for another sweater that I like to knit soon. So I'm really excited about that, and it's just such a good yarn, and it's beautiful. And then for the design, the cardigan itself, I really enjoyed how it turned out. I actually also brought this on my trip to Mexico, so I wore it around a few days. I'll insert pictures wherever I can. But there is German short row shaping on the back and on the shoulders, like the sleeves. And it's just a nice, like, boxy kind of cropped cardigan. It has this stockinette folded detail, which again, mine looks a little bit messed up because I just didn't care to fix it, and I don't mind how it looks. But yeah, there's a stockinette folded over collar, which is really cute, and I just think it's a nice casual piece to have in my wardrobe, and I'm obsessed with the color. I will say that I was having a bit of issues. I don't know if that's I was having a bit of an issue in terms of row gauge on the sleeves. I did the decreases not as specified in the pattern, because if I did that, then my sleeves would be like this long. So I think a few other testers had similar issues. There might be some kind of updates. I kind of just did it so that I did toward the end of the sleeve, I decreased more rapidly. Or I decreased like the last two decreases more frequently than they were prior to that. And so I still had the final number of stitches in the pattern on my sleeve, and I just did the ribbing like that. So it worked out well. I mean, the sleeves are kind of long, but I like this fit. I think, like I said, super cozy and casual, and I've been wearing this a lot since I finished it, and she came to Mexico with me, which was nice to just show her off. And yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with the color pink now. I want to have all the pink clothing in the world. And I mentioned before, I did not think this color looked really great on me, and it still might not be like, exactly my color, but it makes me happy. So that's what really matters. Sorry, I just came back from picking up a few more whips that I forgot in my bedroom. But before we talk about those, I'm going to talk about a few more finished objects. One of them being my Solene cardigan by Moreca Knit that I modified to be more like this Daisy Studios cardigan. I've talked about this cardigan a lot, so if you watch my other episodes, you've seen it quite a bit. But this is the Solene cardigan by Moreca Knit, which is just it's a cardigan that has two I-cord ties in the front. It's very beautiful. It's very like sleek and stylish and trendy looking. And I do really like the look of that cardigan, hence that's why I bought the pattern. But I wanted my final product to be a bit more relaxed and oversized, and like I said, more similar to the Daisy Studios cardigan that I took inspiration from. So I modified it in a few ways that I'm not sure I really got into detail. I don't really think I talked about in detail on my podcast yet. So I knit this at the same yarn weight as specified in the pattern. So I knit this using Cascade 220 and a strand of mohair. So I think that is like an aran-ish weight. It's a worsted plus lace weight. But the pattern specifies knitting on a 4.5 millimeter gauge. I sized up to a 5 millimeter gauge and then sized up half a millimeter on the ribbing and the double knit band as well. To get just like more of like a looser fit, I also sized up in the size. So typically I'd be a size small, but I knitted a size medium again because I wanted it to fit very oversized and comfy. And this is what I came up with. I basically followed the pattern for all the back and the neck and shoulder shaping, which was excellent, by the way. I mentioned this before, but there's so much thoughtful detail in it, and there's a lot of short row shaping, which I think looks great. I think it looks beautiful in this pattern. Obviously, it's kind of hard to see like this, so I'll insert clips of me wearing it or pictures, and there's also there's so much short row shaping on the shoulder caps, and due to the modifications I did in needle sizing and just not really meeting gauge, again my sleeves were a bit different than what's in the pattern, so my sleeves were super wide even if I had the same number of stitches as specified in the pattern. So what I ended up doing was I created more of like a balloon sleeve here. I basically followed the sleeve decreases up until the end, and then right before the ribbing I did a lot of rapid decreases to get a little cinched cuff. So yeah, if you're interested in this cardigan and you look at the Celine cardigan and you're like, why does not look like that? That's because I modified it a lot. Oh, and I also obviously modified it by replacing the I-cord ties with just one double knit tie, which I just prefer the look of more. Like I mentioned, I knit this using Cascade 220 in the color Jet, with a strand of the isager silk mohair in the black color, and this is just the most beautiful yarn combination ever. It's not itchy at all. It's just so comfortable. It looks so smooth and so nice. Let me see if I can get a close-up. And I mentioned this in my last episode, but I have a cat that has white fur, and usually she loves to sit on my knits, and usually her fur gets everywhere. It is everywhere. Like, I'm looking at my couch and there's just so much white fur on there. But this, like, her fur does not really get stuck to this. If she sits on it, there's a little bit here, but I think it's great. It doesn't attract her fur at all, which is so nice for a black garment. And I love this. I also brought this to Mexico and I wore it a lot. I wore it on the flight. It's like a nice, loungewear type piece, which I really like. And then for my last finished object, I don't have it here right now with me because it was a birthday gift for my friend, but I knit a pair of static mittens by Rose Knitwear, and I'll insert pictures. I talked about this in my last episode. I kind of just knit this with random yarn that I had lying around that I bought when I first started knitting. One of the colors was a Malabrigo yarn. It's like the purpley colorful strand was Malabrigo. I have no idea what the other strand was. I'm pretty sure they're both superwash yarns, but I don't want to say that for certain in case they get thrown in the wash and destroyed. So I did buy both of those yarns from Knitty City on the Upper West Side. I'm not sure if they'll still have them in stock, but yeah. I knit the first mitten last year and then just never knit the second mitten, and then I was knitting that mitten during the Super Bowl, during other TV shows that I've been watching. I was just knitting on that, and I gave it to her I think 8 days after her birthday. So no, I think it was like 10 days after her birthday. So it wasn't horrible, but I got them done. And I have pictures. I had a little photo shoot with them before. That's a great pattern. I would definitely recommend it. You knit the mitten flat and then seam it up. It's the only mitten I've ever knit. I also knit a pair for myself last year. So I would recommend it. I think it is pretty beginner friendly. The pattern is like the striping pattern on the mittens is just really fun and so cool to look at when you have a finished object. So yeah, it's a great pattern, and maybe I'll knit another pair. I don't know if I will anytime soon, but I really like them. So now moving on to whips. I have quite a few whips, as I always do, and they're just kind of random. Like, honestly, I talk about my future plans and I kind of abandon those plans and then pick up new things when I want to. So that's kind of why I started a knitting podcast, because I feel like it'd be fun to, or like helpful to have this stuff tracked or recorded somewhere. I am not someone who keeps a knitting journal or organizes things like that. I just kind of do what I want to do, and it'll be interesting to look back on the patterns of my knitting choices and stuff like that. So first one I want to talk about was very inspired by my recent black and pink purchases. And this is an escher beanie by Rose Knitwear. I just really love the colors black and pink together. And I knitted another one of these beanies recently and have been wearing it nonstop. So I had these yarns just around in my stash, and I decided, why not knit a beanie with them? So this is Cascade 220 and isager silk mohair, the same yarns that I used for this sweater. I'm using it for the black, and oh my gosh, there's hair everywhere. I'm so sorry. I get distracted by it. This is Wool in the Gang's Take Care mohair in the color bubblegum. And it's really interesting because obviously this is pink, but I feel like when it's together with the black, it's a lot more subtle of a pink. But I talked about this pattern in my last podcast episode, and I have nothing more to say about it. It's just a really nice striped rib beanie. It's done using like rib stitches and also like slip stitches. And I showed the inside of the beanie the last time, and this is what the inside of this looks like. And I really like it so far. I feel like it's taking a long time to knit up because, like I mentioned, it uses slip stitches. I felt like I zoomed through the other Esther beanie that I had though, and this one's taking a while, but I'm kind of worried I'm gonna like lose yarn chicken with this yarn, and I really don't want to buy another skein because this is an $18 ball of yarn and I'm using this from stash, so I'd rather not buy a new ball of yarn. So we'll see how that works out for me, but I was worried I was playing yarn chicken in my last Esther beanie and I didn't, so maybe the same thing will happen again. It's just a really fun beanie. I love wearing my other one, and the other one I knit was just one strand of a light worsted weight yarn, which I'll talk about in a bit because I'm knitting a garment in the same yarn, and one strand of a worsted weight yarn that's a combination of wool and mohair. And it came up with a pretty thin fabric. I think this one's a lot thicker and fluffier given the mohair content. So I think this will be really nice for when it's really cold outside. And I think for the other beanie, I really enjoy the fit, but it can be a little bit short. So sometimes it rides up and doesn't cover my ears completely. So I'm going to try to knit this one a little bit longer so it can be a warmer beanie. I'm trying to decide whether I should talk about a brand new whip again or just I'll just quickly run through the whips that I've already talked about in previous episodes. One of them being the Amy sweater by petiteknit. I'm still on Body Island for this sweater. I have not gotten a ton of progress on it. Also, it looks tiny. I hope it stretches out when blocking because I do not want it to fit this tight on me. And this I am knitting in the yarn that I just mentioned that I used in my other Esther beanie. This is Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock Worsted. I've talked about this yarn a ton. I think it's a really, really great workhorse yarn. I've been having so much fun knitting with it. I think it's a beautiful, smooth, gorgeous, soft wool yarn, and I love this chocolate brown color. The color is actually called dark chocolate. And ooh, I lost some stitches. Hold on a second. Okay. And yes, I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of like my late night knitting project, or what I need to knit when I'm watching Severance knitting pattern, so that I can just go in the round and not think about what I'm knitting, because a few of my whips, the one I'll talk about next in the Esther beanie, are a bit more, you have to pay attention to them. And I don't think that there's much else to say about this. I'm really liking it. I hope I could do a mid-project block, but I think it'll fit me. I think I'm just having a little bit of body, I don't want to say dysmorphia, but I'm just looking at myself wearing this huge boxy cardigan, and then it looks like it might not fit, but I think it will fit. I think this yarn will block beautifully. This one is not as lint / cat fur repellent as my black cardigan. I mean, it looks fine on camera, but there's just like little fuzzies everywhere. And I'm really excited to wear this. I think this color will look really great on me. I think it's like a similar color to my eyes, so I'm really excited for it. I'll hope, I don't know if I'll have this done by the next podcast episode, but I hope I will. I also forgot to mention I'm knitting this on 4mm needles. My next whip is another one I've shown before. That's also another 4mm project, and it is another petiteknit pattern as well. So there's a lot of similarities to the last one, but it is the Esther sweater by petiteknit, which is this beautiful, beautiful textured sweater. And I don't think it's showing up great on camera, but I am knitting this using pure gynt tweed in Tutti Frutti, marzipan Tutti Frutti, and a strand of, see, I ran out of my ball. I have another ball here if you're interested in looking at the skein. So yeah, this is what it looks like skeined up. And I'm knitting it with a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the colorway Oat. Maybe you'll see the colors. The colors are coming out really nicely. I was kind of unsure at first how I felt about, combining this pattern texture with like a tweed yarn. I feel like some of the tweed specks come out brighter on the wrong side than on the right side, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. It is what it is. I'm just doing what the yarn tells me to do, So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this. It's starting to feel a little bit like a slog because I have to knit this to 50 centimeters in length from the back, and I'm at like 42, 43, and I need to make sure that I end on like a full of one of these diamonds or a full thing of one of these diamonds. So I'm kind of just like, I think I'm on the home stretch. But one thing about this, and I'm telling myself I did not do a gauge swatch. One thing about this is that I think that my row gauge again is pretty off, even though I'm knitting with like yarns and again using a 4mm needle, but yarns and like needles that should match gauge for the pattern. I know I am a pretty tight knitter, but with petiteknit patterns, I'm usually fine. But I have noticed that I have way more diamonds on my body than petiteknit has on hers. So, I mean, that's fine. It'll still be like the same fit and the same length, just with more diamonds on it. So it won't look exactly like hers, but that's the beauty of knitting, right? Like, nothing ever looks the same as how another person makes it. Even if you're using the same yarn, same needles, everything, it's just there's going to be some variation. But yeah, I'm just kind of like waiting until I get to the point where I can switch to ribbing, because I'm just really excited to have this. I think it'll look really cute with a pair of overalls over it. And I have been very into textured knitting in general. I think with my last episode, I talked about a cabled sweater that I'd recently finished. And I would love to cast on more, but given that we're going into spring, I am considering, putting a hold on sweaters for when I finish these. And, well, in my next whip, and then picking up my summer knitting. But I'm getting kind of ahead of myself right now. So, yeah. And apologies, the lighting is very different than how it typically is when I film, because I'm filming a lot later in the day than I usually do. So I'm sorry if you can't see things as nicely, but I really do love pure gynt. I think it's an awesome yarn, and I heard it holds up super well. I don't think I finished garment in tin pure gynt, not regular pure gynt, and I really like that. It is a little bit rougher on the skin, I'd say. Maybe more so than this one for me. But I have no idea why that is. I also knit this without mohair, and then I'm knitting this, and I had knitted my garment using tin pure gynt with a strand of mohair, so maybe that has something to do with it as well. But yeah, I think this is a really beautiful, really fun sweater, and it's been a joy to knit, honestly, even though I'm complaining about how long it's getting to the end of the body. It's just so fun to see it worked up. I feel like last podcast episode I had just joined in the round, and seeing it now on camera, you can really see the texture, which is just such a cool feature. So I'm very excited about this. Okay, and now my final not finished object, whip, clearly not finished object if you see this, is my next whip looks like this, and it is the Lakes pullover by Ozetta. As you can see, the Lakes pullover is a saddle shoulder construction where you start by knitting 2 shoulder pieces and then connecting them and doing short rows to shape the back. I'm at the point where I've completed the short rows, and I just have to knit flat for the length of the back yoke. And yeah, again, this is a yarn that attracts fuzzies, so I need to make sure when I'm knitting on this more that I don't just leave it sitting around so my cat can sleep on it. Even though I love when she sleeps on my knits, it's so cute. But yeah, I knitted this. Well, I started knitting this. I don't even know where to start. I've been wanting a navy blue sweater for a while. This is so specific, but Tiffany Liu of Typical Bliss posted a video, I think like in 2023 around the holidays or something like that, where she was wearing this navy blue sweater, and I think it was a petiteknit pattern that she knit, but it had like a really beautiful like folded ribbed collar, and I thought it looked amazing on her, and I was like, I want a sweater like that. She was wearing a headband, and I was like, I want to look exactly like that. So I was on the quest to find navy blue yarn, and this yarn I've talked about a few times on this channel before. This is Quince & Co. Crane. And I actually, this was the other strand along with the woolstock worsted that I used for my Esther beanie, just in a different color. This is 50% wool, 50% mohair. It's single ply yarn. It's super soft, but it does, I've knit a few things with this at this point. I know it does get kind of like, it felt, I guess is the way to say it. It gets kind of like weird and like chunky if it sits around for a while. So I bought this. I was obsessed with this yarn. I got a gift card from my friends for my birthday 2 years, I guess in 2023. So maybe Tiffany was wearing the sweater even before that. But got a gift card from my friends for Quince & Co. and I picked up some skeins of this yarn. I think this is in the color, I don't remember. I think this base, the colors are named after places in Texas. And I want to say this one's Alamo, but I might be confusing it with the red one. So I will put it in the description what color this is below, but this is just a really, really beautiful navy blue that's so dark. It's like almost black, and I love it. One thing is that this is, I would say this is a pretty light worsted weight, or maybe it is worsted weight, and I'm not very good at telling yarn weights. But the point is, I didn't meet gauge with this yarn on its own for this pattern, and like I mentioned before, this is single ply, it's super soft, it's prone to pilling. So I wanted to hold another strand with it, but I didn't want mohair just because this already has mohair in it, and I was like, how wearable is that really going to be? Like, it's still going to be wearable, but it's just like, I have a lot of really warm sweaters in my sweater collection, and I didn't really want like a super fluffy mohair sweater for this, so I decided to try out a lace weight alpaca. I think this might be alpaca 2 by it's by Isager. I think it's alpaca 2, but yeah, it's just a lace weight alpaca yarn, and I'm really enjoying it. You can see that this one's like a little lighter than this one, so I was worried about how it would look knitted up, but I think it looks great. I think you can't even tell there's like a slight color difference. I think it just looks like a nice navy yarn. I will say that I still didn't really like, again, I didn't gauge watch, but I still didn't really like the gauge that was being knitted up with a 5mm needle, which is specified in the pattern. So I sized down to a 4.5mm needle. And I did check my gauge. Usually I'm being super lazy here. Like, I should just use gauge swatch. And I have done gauge swatches for other patterns, but I do them for test knits, okay? But usually I just measure, like when I'm knitting, I just measure the swatch for the unblocked portion and then just assume it's going to grow a little bit. But yeah, that's what I did with this, and I really liked how it was knitting up on a 4.5mm needle a lot better than on a 5mm needle. And I'm enjoying the fabric that's being knit up. It's really nice. I'm a huge fan of the crane yarn, and I've only ever knit it on its own, so I'm really excited to see how the addition of the alpaca lace will affect it. I'm not sure if it is kind of similar to mohair in that it helps with pilling, or it might. I feel like that's what people say about holding multiple strands in general, but if you have any insight on how lace weight alpaca affects a knitted object, I'd be very interested to learn more. But yeah, again, don't have a ton to say about this because I'm not very far along, but I do really like the look of the finished object of the lace pullover. I love a saddle shoulder. I love how chunky and thick that ribbed collar is. So I think this will be a really great thing to have in my wardrobe. And as I was just saying, I know we're getting into spring, so the chances of me, once I finish these 2 sweaters I'm more far along on, once I finish those, there is a chance I might put this one on ice for a bit while I pick up some warmer weather garments. But we'll see. Maybe I'll be like really enjoying the process and want to get this done. So that's that. Okay, and now we're at the end of the podcast. Usually I don't have acquisitions to show, but I did pick up some exciting acquisitions while I was in Mexico. One day we decided to walk around this neighborhood called Condesa, which is a really cool, artsy, hipstery neighborhood in Mexico City. And we were just kind of people watching, dog watching. There are a lot of dogs there. Looking at the boutiques that are along the street. And we came upon this store called Donde Clara. That was really cute. I don't really know if it was considered a craft store or what, but it had some antique buttons, some like sewing threads, some just like random textiles about here and there, and I'll insert pictures that I took in the store. But they also had yarn. They had, this is a cotton yarn. Not sure of the weight, like what the thickness. I did weigh these together. This one is 140 grams and this one is 160 grams. But this is a cotton yarn. It looks like it was hand dyed. This one particularly, you can see, I don't know if you can see the variation. It's like a tonal, like light blue and a darker blue. I don't know Spanish, to be honest, but this is what's written. I know it's the first 2 words are cotton skein, but I'm not sure what the bottom word is. So if you know, let me know. But I thought it would be nice to pick up a nice yarny souvenir from Mexico. I'm not sure if Mexico is really well known for its yarn production, but so I wasn't planning on visiting a yarn store while I was there, but we just happened upon this store and I thought it'd be a fun souvenir. And luckily this is enough to probably knit a nice cotton tank top for the summer. So yeah, I am very excited about it, and I think it reminds me of Blue from Blue's Clues. Like, I was thinking of knitting a striped tank top, and it reminds me of the dog from Blue's Clues, which is, fun, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, this is the only acquisition, or these are the only acquisitions that I have for my trip. Sadly, my socks in another sock yarn, my boyfriend's socks in another sock yarn are left behind in Mexico. But my boyfriend thinks he's gonna make another trip at the end of this month, so maybe he will pick up my backpack for me, hopefully, because I would like my AirPods back. So yeah, that's the end of my knitting podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next one.